risk advisory practice here, and we work really closely with the IIA, and my role at the moment is to get you all excited about the emergency exits and toilet facilities that you're in at the moment. So just house rules, bathrooms just the other side of here, down a little path and on your left. And the emergency exits are just before then, with the stairs going 13 stories down. So fingers crossed there's no need to use them today, because I don't fancy walking down 13 flights of stairs. And just to note, on your way out, either the upper ground or the lower ground, there's a button on the right-hand side which will allow you to exit the doors. It's a big green button, and if any of you don't notice it, just feel free to come back up and find me, and I'll be more than happy to show you. So we've got an exciting evening planned for tonight. I'm going to hand over to Chris, who's going to introduce the rest of the proceedings. And I said, if you've got any other questions, feel free to give us a shout while you're here. Welcome.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. Welcome and good evening, everyone, tonight. Very warm welcome to you and to those behind the screens. We are web streaming to quite a number of people who will sit in their offices at home with a glass of wine and hopefully, quite likely, enjoying what we will all. Very warm welcome to you, Robert.
Thank you.
I will introduce you in a moment. We are talking about when the good guy's the bad guy, and how we're handling personal stress and building resilience. Now, that'll be really exciting, a bit unusual within our environment to talk about, but I'm open about it because I think there's a very good reason for such a talk. Thanks very much to RSM for hosting and having us tonight. We rely on the likes of RSM to really make these kind of member meetings beneficial, make it happen, and thanks very much. After the talk, we will have the opportunity to network, get to know each other, and you can also find out a bit more about the Institute. Talking about the Institute and their representatives, we've got Charlie Pottycombe, the chair here, Atul, who's a councillor, well, and I'm Chris Benniker, councillor of the New South Wales chapter myself. So we'll be around now and later on, giving you the opportunity to talk to us, give us feedback, and let us know what you think about the IIA and what we could probably improve. Just maybe as a quick reminder, for those who have not registered yet, and we're getting very close to the end of financial year, there's still the opportunity to register for the international. This is a very rare opportunity. Everyone had the brochure on their seats. This is a very rare opportunity for all of us to connect with the top leaders in our profession. Standing keynote speakers who would usually not appear in Australia. There will be many, many sessions that will meet your interest and will give you new ideas of how to conduct your internal audit and risk management business. So 23rd to 26th of July, just register. Let me formally introduce Dr. Robert Holmes. Robert is the leader for People and Change in RSM's Management Consulting Division in Australia. He is an industry expert in human behavior, focusing on improving performance, increasing resilience, and dealing with stress. Robert works regularly with executives, senior government officials, and business owners, coaching career and business issues. He is the Secretariat for the Interdepartmental Forum on Mental Health and published 6 books on management, coaching, theology, and has written for 15 international journals and magazines. PhD in neuropsychology and on trauma and PTSD.
Yep.
And he's a research fellow for the Neurocoaching Institute on Stress and Resilience. Also, he's a doctor in theology. So Robert has presented in many, many ways to many, many, many different institutions. I don't start listing them here. He's a professional certified coach, a certified action learning coach, and an accredited mentor coach. He's a member of the Coaching Psychology Interest Group at the APS and a member of the Australian Institute of Management Consultants. What I found out is you want people working at their full potential, achieving high performance, restore balance, and build resilience and recover from stress and trauma. Forward to a really, really interesting talk. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you. Strategically placed to keep my eyes out of the sun so that I don't squint for the camera. So I apologise for the odd angle that I'm going to present to you here, but I'll basically move between these 2 spots because it's safe. I am unashamedly an academic. You can tell that from the exhausting lineup of degrees that I have. I'm ashamed about that because I think everything that we do has to be backed by research. And the problem, though, with being targeted as an academic is that people think you live in an ivory tower, and I don't get along with people at universities very well. So this second half of me is possessed with making sure things actually work on the ground. I want it to be evidence-based. I want to see something work in people's lives, and if it doesn't, I'm not interested. I don't care if it was a New York Times bestseller. I don't care if Anthony Robbins held it up as something worth reading. It's with Australians in our culture, in our context. So that's kind of where I come from. I come from is it researched, and is there evidence for it? And if there isn't, can we find out? Can we go run an experiment? And so I wanted to know why there was so much incidence of PTSD among people returning from Afghanistan, a war which should have been much less body contact, much less physical impact than war, but it has produced a much higher rate of mental health issues than the previous wars. Either we're dealing with, we never recognised it before, or we're dealing with something remarkably new in a new way of doing warfare. And so I got involved with the Australian Army, and so I got involved in studies on how therapy for PTSD and so forth. Now, the Army's a long, long way from doing internal audits, you might think, but the stressors that our soldiers go through are every bit the same as what you and I go through in our work. And so I'm going to take the learnings that I've had, and you'll see how that works. And I've forgotten to bring the clicker over, so I'll never be able to move or advance the screen. So there you go. I just moved through the danger zone. It was a highly stressful situation for a public speaker. So what I'm going to do is take you through what happens when you and I, who we go to work, we're the good guys, right? We're the auditors. We're there to help the companies we work with and work for. We're not there to find out bad things. We're not there to get anyone in trouble. But sometimes we end up being perceived as the bad person. And so I'm not speaking out of some hypothetical knowledge here. As you've already been told, I've got a bunch of stuff that I do and it's interesting. This you may not have heard of. It's the peak body for understanding mental health solutions for the government. and I started it with Dr. Jill Charker, agencies that belong to that organisation, and we have a meeting every 3 months, and we bring in the experts. I'm talking the Black Dog Institute, St Vincent's Hospital. We bring in all the researchers from the ANU, and we say, tell us about what you're doing for Australian government workers, right? You couldn't think of a group of people that might have less reason to be stressed than our soldiers over at this end and our kind of white collar workers in Canberra at this end. So stress and resilience does everything in between, and you and I sit in that group of people. Coming to work, the commute in Sydney is getting worse and worse. That's stressful enough. Coming from where did we stop, Beverly Hills, to getting on to Martin Place was stressful for me because it's been 20 years since I lived here. It's not academic though for me. Internal audit is not a thing that I speak to you about as though I hadn't actually gone and got my hands dirty. So this is a laundry list of my career, starting out in the hotel industry, becoming a financial controller, doing my CPA, going through my PY. Please don't be snobbish about those of you who are CAs. Being an internal auditor for Canon Australia up there in North Ryde, really getting a penchant for finding out stuff inside numbers and getting involved in forensic accounting and ultimately in catching criminals, which was a lot of fun until. It was a lot of fun until the person you caught confronted you, or you confronted the person you caught. It was a lot of fun finding stuff. I'm like a hound, you know, I love hunting stuff down, and I was pretty good at it, and I bet you are too, until you have to present the report, the evidence, the conflict that comes with facing the people that were doing the wrong thing, whether they did it on purpose or not. And I've just come through an internal audit investigation with the Consumer Affairs Victoria Bureau of Finance, and RSM were working with them. I obviously can't tell you the details, but somebody was doing something wrong. And they called me. And why would they do that when we have a fraud and forensics department? Well, it was because they wanted me to sit in the interviews and watch people and give feedback to the executives about whether the people that were being interviewed were telling the truth or lying, which is one of the skills I picked up sort of later in the journey. Was going to Paul Ekman and doing his course in facial recognition of emotions and all the rest of it. I love people. I love watching people. I love sitting, nothing better than sitting, grabbing a cup of coffee and watching the sidewalk. I love that. It's just not the sidewalk, the people on the sidewalk. I love that. I just love watching how people interact on a train, watching how when a seat folds over as it did on the train we were on, folds over the wrong way, what people do when, you know, they respond to try and push the seat back, and then nobody helps them. People are sitting around watching somebody in a suit holding a seat up with their foot on the iPhone and not knowing what to do. And I just love figuring out what's going on in people's minds when they do that. Why does nobody get up? I didn't get up either. I thought it was hilarious. Did you? I mean, did you see that? You're sitting just behind it. Anyway, so business facilitation, ran a publishing company, tourism, public speaking, did careers conferences, did foreign aid, helped Zambia and Zimbabwe with their cholera outbreak, spent millions of dollars of embassy's money helping people in Africa, ran Australia's third largest coaching company, and finally came and joined RSM. Now, RSM are crazy. They're nuts. It's nuts, right? What is a professional services firm doing hiring a neuropsychologist? It's nuts, right? But where I fit is way over here on the edge of people and change, right? And people and change fit kind of on the edge of management consulting, which kind of is friends with audit and assurance. Yeah? So my neighbours are you guys, and I'm over here in neuropsych. And then they pay me, which I just think is brilliant. I love it. So anyway, listen, going back to what we do for a living. We basically go do stuff, and whether you, doesn't matter what kind of audit you're doing, whether it's a quality audit, whether it's a financial assurance audit, whether it's a, it doesn't matter what it is, you're going to come up with 4 kinds of findings. Everything's cool, unqualified. Everything might be cool, but I had to ask questions, kind of qualified. Everything's not cool, kind of adverse, that's supposed to be red. Maybe we can turn these front row lights off, Jess. Maybe that'd help. Is she even in the room, Jess? Where are you? Turn that front row. And then disclaimed. Anyone ever had to issue a disclaimed? Boy, that's painful, isn't it? Giving a disclaimed, whew, that's a conflict time, right? So that's a very unpleasant part of our job, and I'm really glad only 3 of you had to put up your hands. But they're meant to take the firm forward, aren't they? Our job is meant to help. It's supposed to produce good things, isn't it? I mean, we might have bad findings, but having the bad findings, we make suggestions in our reports that say, now that we know this, we think you should do this, and things will be better, right? The problem is, you and I both know that's not how it goes down. We have all sorts of clients, and they don't all like being told stuff. They like thinking that they did it all right. So when that happens, I did this little grid. I just thought, when I even today with the CAV in Victoria, right, with the findings where we didn't quite find enough evidence to put the guy away, but we found enough to say stuff was kind of not, it was a bit funky and it shouldn't have happened, and we kind of decided to audit everybody else, and it was an interesting audit. We got 4 reactions from that group of people. Number one, we found stuff and it was helpful, and they heard us, and that's great. So there was a group of people that said, fantastic, what can we do? Let's go through the recommendations. Then there was a group of people where they found stuff and we couldn't think of anything very clever to say. Like, we couldn't come up with recommendations, so we just said we found it. And that's probably the worst part of auditing, because if you don't come up with some kind of clever answer, they wonder why they're paying you. So that's not really a great quadrant to be in. One of the people on the team, I have to say, I'm not going to name them. Oh, here I am in the dark spot again. In the red quadrant, one of the people on our just a jerk. Okay, I just have to say, we found something and they just used it like a weapon. Okay, that is just not cool for an internal auditor to use evidence as a weapon to kind of pummel or persecute or tell the client that they're an idiot. Okay, that's just not great. So you don't want to end up in that quadrant. Where stress comes for me, and where I really want to focus in our talk tonight, is what happens when you find valid stuff and you give it to them with really great ideas, but they get defensive about it. So you're talking apples and they're talking oranges. You're offering, outcomes, and they're getting defensive because they think you're taking them down. That's kind of to me where the most stressful part of our work is. And there's no doubt that when you go to work to do the right thing, and you end up being the bad guy, that'll drive you nuts, and it did, and that's why I quit. So I got out of audit, I got out of fraud and forensics, and I went off and did business facilitation for the New South Wales Department of State and Regional Development. And then I ended up running a business incubator and helping people start businesses. And it was really to make me feel better, because I wanted to help people again and be thanked for it instead of yelled at. I mean, getting money is one thing, but I wouldn't mind some appreciation. So I've come all the way around the mountain now, and I've come all the way back, and I've said, what if I stuck at my guns? Because I've got people just up the corridor from me who do what I used to do, and I walk past thinking, good on you, mate, better you than me, like, I'm happy doing what I'm doing, but they're doing what I used to do, and they are stressed out some days, like they're really stressed out. So what can we do? Number one, let's just all agree what stress is. Stress isn't just a feeling. Okay, it's a physical response. It's a psychological response. It's an emotional response. And the only reason it happens is that we're going through change, adverse situation. And adverse is a very relative term, because what's adverse to you and me is not adverse to an SAS soldier. So adverse is a very term for whatever you, like me trying to find Martin Place, which isn't on the city circuit. I mean, you all know that, right? But I'm from Canberra, so we're going to Martin Place circle. Martin Place is in the middle, of course, but who knew? So we got off at Circular Quay and wandered around and asked a taxi driver, "Where's Castlereagh Street?" We can't find it. So, just from a very broad-based, this has got scientific backing, but just at a very high level, this is what happens when you and I get stressed. So we come up with our findings, we give them to our client, and our client says, "What? I never said that, and that's not true, and I'm not giving that to the board." Boom, in comes stimuli, right? In through all your senses, in comes this response to your brain, and your brain kind of identifies what's happening as a threat. And it says, oh, that's not what I was expecting today. I was expecting you to say thank you, and okay, this is not great. Number 3, your body gets aroused, it gets activated. All these beautiful chemical reactions, 37 chemical reactions take place simultaneously over 9 minutes. Bam, 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 like fireworks going off inside, and you can't stop it. As soon as it starts, shorter than 9 minutes, okay? Even an athlete can't do that until the threat is over. So walk out of the meeting, give the thing, freak out, get on the car, scream your lungs out, have a glass of red wine, finally calm down. Technology will return to calmness once you no longer feel under threat. The problem is that report still exists, that client still exists, that threat still exists, and the minute you go to work tomorrow, it'll still be there. And you now face the problem of being triggered again. So I just wanted to burrow down into this kind of blue stage for a second, without getting too sciencey, just to say, once you are stressed, so let's say you're making a presentation to the board, right? And you're giving the recommendations, and you go into a stress response because the chairman doesn't like point number 3, and you've gone, you're in stress response. First thing that happens is your thinking brain gets down-regulated 25%. So you get a little bit stupider, okay? Straight out the gate, a little bit dumb. The second thing that happens is your emotions get up-regulated 25%, so you get a little bit more emotional. So you feel like you're about to cry. Okay, that's straight out of the gate, first response. Anyone ever had that? No, you don't have to show your hands for the sake of the camera. But this is not a great state to present in. Okay, so public speakers, this is death. If you get into a stress response while you're public speaking, it's over for you. You might as well sit down and take 9 minutes and then get back up again, because you find words hard to find. You find the subject material dense to work through. You can't remember why you came up with that not clever recommendation anymore, and you feel like crying. The second thing that happens is that your heart rate goes up, your breathing rate goes up, your blood is getting ready for impact. It thinks you're all going to get hit, right? Which is not really great, because who knows what happens with a heightened heart rate and heightened breathing? More oxygen coming in. What happens? What's happening to you? There's a kind of shock going on. So you're over-oxygenating the blood, which gives you a head spin, which is not great because you are standing, presumably, or you're at the head of the table, hyperventilating. Too much oxygen in the system. Heart rate pushes blood pressure up. What happens when blood pressure goes up? Well, yeah. I mean, if you're in the zone for a heart attack, yeah. If you're in the right age category for a heart attack, this is not great news. Okay. If you're fighting fit and happy, well, good for you. But most of us live a sedentary auditing life, right? So we're not into that. Stage 3, your immune system becomes suppressed, and your memory switches from narrative to emotional. Now, who can see a problem with that? Narrative is, I said this, then she said that, then I said this, then they said that, then I presented that report, but it switches from that normal system to the other system, which is emotional memory. She said that, bitch. Oh, I can't believe. Focus. He said that. I can't believe he said it. What happens to the narrative for you?
Logical.
Yeah, you don't have one. So you leave the meeting with no story. Now, because we've just had a meeting with the board and the chairman didn't like point number 3 and I can't remember the narrative. Okay? So here's the first thing you should be doing, is taking notes. Not just notes of what's going on, but what's going on for you. The first thing you should be doing is saying, I am having a reaction to his reaction to point number 3. So what was point number 3 and why did he react? Boom, 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 boom. Right. Because what you're going to do is start switching the memory back out of emotional to narrative again. You're going to say, back to story, back to story, back to story, because you need your memory of the story to write the minutes, don't you? Unless you have a secretary. Good for you. If you carry your secretary with you to every meeting, that's great. You're better off than I am. The last one is your vigilance goes up, your impulsivity goes up. Can anyone see a problem here at a board meeting? Your impulsivity goes up. I know we're all very conservative here, but your fear response is increased and your likelihood of starting a fight goes up about 50%. So he's going to get defensive about point number 3, and then you're going to start getting defensive, and now we're out of control. Now, this can happen behind closed doors, or it can happen in public. Has anyone ever seen this happen on a bus or a tram or a train, where two people start, the whole thing just is cycling into, what are they doing? What is this even about? All he did was get in the door ahead of her. This is what's going on for them, right? They're out of control. They're out of their normal rational memory. And you and I, we want to avoid that. So Hans Selye, who did some research about 30 years ago, was trying to figure out how to stop people having that reaction. He was trying to figure out, how do you stop a person from when they get stimulated? And he made this interesting comment about resilience. He said, resilience to the stress response can only last so long before fatigue sets in, and then exhaustion, and then eventually death. So if you stay in a stressed response, that can only last so long, get exhausted, and after you get exhausted and fatigued, you die. Has anyone made a link back to our soldiers? Yeah. The average length of deployment for an Australian soldier in World War II? Just guess, ballpark. How long would we have sent them over there with their horses? 6 months? 5 months? Great, 5 or 6 months, that's great. How long do you think your average soldier in Australia gets deployed to Afghanistan for? Yep, 18 months, 2 years, then we bring them home, then we send them back. 18 months, 2 years. Can you begin to think how that is creating something that we've never done to people before? We're pushing them past their resilience point, past their stress response, into exhaustion and fatigue, and we're creating a generation of PTSD. Now, I'll explain what PTSD is in a minute, but here's the first tool I want you to take away. This is a free to take home, free on the RSM website, free on my LinkedIn page, free on the US Navy page. Take it home and use it. Diagram. This is your takeaway to start with. And it's called the US Naval Stress Response Traffic Light. And it's a self-diagnostic tool, and it's very easy to use. Am I ready for the work that's sitting in front of me? Yes. Am I good to go? Yes. Am I fit? Am I focused? Yes. Then go ahead, train hard, build your team. Beautiful. But wait a minute. I've gone through this situation and I'm feeling worried, I'm feeling irritable, I'm feeling sad for no very good reason. I'm washing up and I'm crying for no reason. Okay, great. What we want you to do is go talk to somebody you trust, not a psych, not a doctor, go talk to a friend, loved one, brother, sister. And what we want you to do is return to the green zone. It's not so hard, right? If you're feeling sad, go talk to somebody you trust. And we know the research has shown us that this works. This is great. But wait a minute, what if I had this persistent distress? What if I'm fatigued? What if I find myself reacting with grief? What if I'm past that and it's kind of malignant and it's staining? What we want you to do is talk to a chaplain or a counsellor or a medical person, a coach. You don't have to go see a doctor yet, but we want you to go see kind of a paramedic, somebody who's in the field who can help you. And then that'll take you to talk to somebody you trust, and then that'll be all fine because you can run. The only point at which we're really going to have problems is, what if the impact of the stress that I'm going through gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse? I've asked to get off this client and they won't take me off this client. I've asked not to work with so-and-so and they keep putting me with so-and-so. I've asked not to, I live in the North Shore and I have to keep going to Bondi and it's a 2-hour commute both ways and it's very stressful to me. And I can see it cycling. I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop stewing on it. Okay, great. We want you to seek medical attention. We want you to go to the doctor. We want you to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. We want you to think about medication. But ultimately we want you to go back to green. Does that make sense? And it's really easy. Once you teach soldiers how to do this, they identify where they are and they can identify the action to take. It's not appropriate to go to the doctor and get antidepressants. It really isn't. Most of the time it is not appropriate to do that. Sometimes it is, but under these conditions. So we'll just, by the way, you can ask questions any time. Just stick your hand up or call out or yell at me and whatever you like. I'm going to leave lots of time at the end for you to do that too. But if any of this you want to ask about, just stop me. Cool? Yeah, good. So I got this friend, Petra Skeffington. She works over at the Curtin University in Western Australia. And I hung out with her at the PTSD conference or forum in 2015. And we were talking about an evidence-based theory for resilience. What do we know about resilience? And she did her PhD on resilience, not surprisingly. And this is her research findings. When you talk to Petra, she says that her PhD, has anyone here got one? No. You really want your PhD to work. Pick something that's unique in the world, and then you go study it, and you really want that thing to be cool, and you want it to work out well. Right? So if you ask Petra, the results of her research were exactly nothing. So she got to the end of 6 years of work, and she had nothing to show for it, except this cool diagram, which I think was worth the whole thing, right? When you put a human being through a traumatic event, and her definition of a traumatic event was 9/11. So when you put somebody through 9/11 or Mount St. Helens or the Lint Cafe, when you put somebody through that event, what happens? And she found that 72% of the population will resist and recover from that traumatic event in 1 week. And the younger you are, the quicker it is. 1 week. That's amazing. Of all the people living in New York after the 2 buildings fell, 72% of them were back to normal within a week, and some of them were out buying bagels the next day. I mean, amazing, right? Aren't we? Aren't we amazing? So just take that for a minute and say, I'm probably a very resilient human being. I probably am. 18% of them will react, respond, and recover eventually after a month. Some 6 months, some 12 months, at way out at the tail end of Six Sigma, but they'll recover. And 10% of them get PTSD. And they're the ones who get exposed to 9/11 after 9/11 after 9/11 after 9/11 after 9/11 after 9/11. Is it any wonder they become traumatized? So we begin to come up with some solutions for our Australian soldiers. Yay. But what we learn here is, thank you, Petra, for all your hard work. What we learn here is 90% of the population will recover from something very traumatic fairly quickly. Well, that's you, probably. I don't know how many people are here tonight, but, they wouldn't want to be the 10%. No, I'm just kidding. Because even you can recover nowadays, because we know how to work with trauma. So what we're saying is 90% of the population are already resilient, which is what really annoys me when people are out in the marketplace in Australia selling resilience products to corporate Australia. Because they don't start here. They start with the 10% and they tell you that story. Right? That really annoys me. Like, some of us are suffering, I get it. My mum was one of them. She needed help. But why don't we start with the good news, right? I think that's really good news. Now, has anyone heard, I can't remember the name of this study, but has anyone heard of the study of the 1,000 people that were put through Six Flags, which is a theme park in Florida, and they were put on roller coasters all day? Anyone heard of that? It's a pretty old study now. It's about 10 years old. So what they did, who even thinks of these things? A psychologist crazy. They got nothing to do. They make up these really, it's like, let's put people on roller coasters all day. That'll be fun, right? So they get 1,000 people. They make sure that they're all roughly the same age, roughly the same demographic, all roughly the same, randomly select them, and then they stick them on roller coasters all day. And what they do is, before the 3 hours it was actually, before the 3 hours, they do a full blood test to figure out how much cortisol, how much norepinephrine, how much stress hormones, what's going on inside you, full kind of health check, and ask one very simple question. Do you like roller coaster rides or not? Blood tests, like roller coaster rides or not? Very simple, elegant test. The simpler the better in science, actually. So we run all these people all day on roller coasters, poor buggers, and for 3 hours, and what we find is people who started out, because a double-blind study, you can unpick the data and find out who liked it and who didn't want their bloods to. After the roller coaster ride, they then did a full blood panel again, and then 3 months later, they did a full blood panel again. So I've got 3 data points to compare, and they found the people who started out perceiving that roller coaster rides were bad, in other words, they didn't like roller coaster riding, ended up with increased levels of cortisol, norepinephrine, and adrenaline, which produce fear and anxiety, which 3 months later increased the level of sickness in that population by 30%. For 3 hours of roller coaster riding. By contrast, the 500 people that were put on the roller coasters who loved roller coaster riding had a day of fun, right? So they had increased levels of cytokines, interleukins, and interferons, which produce joy and peace. And 3 months later, guess what? 30% increased wellness. That's a 60% disparity over 3 months. I mean, that's huge. Now, what caused it? Perception. That's all. There was nothing different about the rides, nothing different about the clothing, nothing different about anything except whether they liked roller coasters or didn't like roller coasters. That's like saying, do you like dogs or not like dogs? Here's a dog. And your sickness goes up or down based on whether I give you a dog, right? What even is that? That is, to me, that is takeaway number 2. Can you change your perception about something? About a board member, about a chairperson, about a meeting, about a building, about a commute, about a car, about a person. Do you have the power to change your perception? I hope so. Do you have a pulse? Some of you didn't say yes. No, so perception, what is your perception about your job role? What are you here to do? You see, my first problem as an internal auditor is I had the wrong idea about what my job was, didn't I? I set myself up for failure. What did I think my job was about? I already told you at the start.
Helping people.
Helping people, right? Not finding the right numbers, not balancing the books, not improving corporate performance, not helping people. That is a terrible definition for an internal auditor to get up and go out to work with. It's terrible. It should form a part of what we do, but it was my definition, right? I should have thought about my perception about my job role. How do you perceive your outcomes? Remember the quadrant of the outcomes? You can have good outcomes, you can have the green, the red, the yellow, the orange, you can have never the black, please. What is your perception? Are they all the same, or is it good to get green ones and bad to get black ones? And you can deal with the orange ones. How do you feel about the kind of findings that you produce? You shouldn't feel anything. They're just findings, right? They're just facts. You just found them. They carry no intrinsic meaning except the meaning you give them. True? What is your perception about your client? Are they your friend? Are they your lover? Are they your donor? Do they pay your salary? Do you need them? Can you do without them? You see, all of those positions will affect my interactions with my client. Say, hey, I'm here to do my job. Like me, hate me, it's cool. I'm not going to get stressed out by your response. If I go in there going, please love me, I need you to accept me, and you don't, I'm going to get hammered. And I pretty much did have that attitude about my clients. I need you to love me. What is your perception about people's reactions to what you find? You see where we're going with this? We're saying these are all in your control. You can alter the way you experience people's reactions to your findings. Every field has its stresses. It doesn't matter what we do for a living. the stress comes from the expectations that we place on ourselves or the expectations that others place. You know, you walk in there for that first meeting, the opening meeting with the client, and they tell you what you're there for. That's your moment to redefine their reality. I appreciate that's what you think I'm here for. Do you know what I think I'm here for? I think I could let's have a dialogue about what I'm here for. It's called engagement framing. Yeah? So we're framing the engagement properly so that we don't end up being victims. Because they know. Has anyone ever been in an internal audit where they felt set up by the client? You were just destined to fail? Yeah. That's a framing problem, right? Because they know there's an issue and they need to blame somebody, so they're going to get you in and you're going to find it and there'll be no solution and you'll be blamed. Right? That's terrible. So what we need to do is go in a little bit more cynically, a little bit more casually and say, I see, this is an interesting setup that you've got here. Do you mind if I ask around a little bit before we sign the piece of paper that says you're paying me the money? Like just anything will do to stop and think about what's going on. The client, the employer, ourselves. Stress comes from all over the place, but we ultimately are in control of our environment. Now, this is a little try, my attempt at humour, and please do not feel in any way denigrated or put down by this slide. This is from the 2017 10 most and least stressful jobs by Business News Daily, which I granted is an American company, but it's kind of funny. So let's just put our jobs in perspective for a minute, right? The diggers that I'm talking about work in the military, and the stress level that's used in the scale that was created by Rahe and Holmes, these dudes are running at 72.74, right? So they're at war, right? They're getting shot at. 72.4, we're not getting shot at. So we've got police, yeah, they're pretty much getting shot at. Surgeons and pilots, well, we enter a category of kind of work here where life and death is on the line. You know, if you don't do your job and you don't do it at 100%, imagine being a pilot that had 99.9% success at landing. Or a heart surgeon, or a brain surgeon, right? You pretty much got to get it right all the time. So they're at the front end, news reporting, and why are these dudes here? These guys are sitting here just over 50%, 50 on the Rahe scale. What are they doing? News reporter? Come on, get here, bro.
They make a mistake.
Right, they make a mistake and then they get publicly humiliated, right? It's terrible. And war correspondents are also in the firing line. So they get up there. Taxi drivers, they're in the line of fire too. I mean, not just from being vomited on a Thursday night in Sydney, but being shot or having their taxi stolen. Down to a broadcaster, TV and radio, same thing. What happens when they get it wrong? So there's your top 10 kind of going down this way. Now your bottom 10 are here. These dudes, I love these dudes. Just at my office, the offices of RSM Cameron are in Deakin. And right next to us are the offices of Telstra. And right outside Telstra this morning was a Telstra technician in a pink van, which I thought was lovely. And he pulled the lid off the, whatever that is, and he was working on it. He has the least stressful job in the world. He has no customer demand. He has no performance requirements. He has no boss to watch over him. He's sitting out in the sun. He can take his time. He can go get a cappuccino, which is beautiful at the EQ Cafe just down the road. Like, I passed that guy thinking of this slide this morning, thinking, you lucky bastard. Sonographers, these are the people that, I don't even know what a sonographer is. I was going to make something up, but I don't even know what they are. Anyone know what a sonographer is? Sound engineer, maybe?
I think it's sonar.
A sonar guy?
Yeah,
that's it. We'll skip this for a second. Start at the top of the bottom 10. Medical lab technician, yeah, I get that, doing bloods. Web developer, cruisy, out to surf, shorts t-shirt, probably smoking dope. Writer, you got your own thing. Let's be honest about ourselves for a minute. We're here. Okay? Auditors, internal and external, are 5 on the scale. That's cool. We get to get up every day of the week and go do a 5. That's cool. I think that's great. Accounting is just a little bit above. I don't know why. They're a 6. I don't know why accountants get a 6. I think our job is harder than the accountants, right? But for some reason, maybe it's the face-to-face stuff, maybe it's the legal liability, I don't know, whatever. whatever the reason is, they got here. But let's just get perspective on our job, okay? It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. We're not flying anything. The other thing I want to just get a little bit of context on is the scale, again by Holmes and Ray, a long time ago they built this. Just think about the most stressful cumulative things that happen in your life. Everybody's seen this chart before, haven't you? It's just, I bet you haven't seen the whole chart with every element on it, right? Which is only available to researchers. And what I thought was really cool, I added these two back in because they're not in the thing that you see in Choice magazine. You know these 100%, oh God, death of a spouse, these are all personal injury, losing your child, retirement, changing career, losing your mortgage, changing work responsibilities, trouble with your boss, personal rejection, right? So Tinder, swipe left, right? That's a 19. Professional rejection is a 16. Okay, so on the scale of cumulative stressful events, when I present reports and findings and they aren't accepted, we're talking about a 16 on the out of 100 compared to losing my wife. So I'm not saying that's nothing, but I am saying put it in perspective and have a glass of wine and go home happy, right? It's just like, all right, I get it. So I'm going to end with this, and I hope you're thinking now and using your creative juices. I've got 2 slides to go. I hope you think that's pretty, because that took me a long time to make. I'm telling you, talking in public for a living. So who'd do it? This guy here is you. Sorry about pink for the boys. It's blue around him. This guy is you. So what can you do? What are some takeaways that you can do today to help you deal with tomorrow's crisis? When we're going to that board meeting, we're presenting that problem and somebody rejects us, what can you do? Well, number one, you can have a look at your perspective. You can just stop and take a deep breath and say, am I looking at this right? Am I seeing this right? Is this what this is about? Really? You brought my whole career down to this? I don't think so. Right? Just step back for a minute. Secondly, reframe your experience. So remember I was talking about framing your client and saying, oh, I get it that that's what you want, but here's what I want. You can reframe your experience. A fascinating study was done on people recovering from a car accident. So, bam, they've had a smash, ambulance has turned up, they've gone off to the hospital in an ambulance, they've been traumatized, right? So they're in that 18% taking a month to recover kind of group, yeah? And they did this UCLA study on reframing your experience. So what they did with these people is they said, we know you've been through a traumatic experience. We don't want to talk to you about the traumatic experience for fear of re-traumatizing you, which happens in 33% of the cases. So what we want to do instead is just pretend you're the ambulance driver. Can we do that? Okay, close your eyes. So now you're the ambulance driver and you're turning up. And you're helping somebody else get in the ambulance and you're coming away. Have a guess what the recovery rate increase was in the people. So obviously they split it and double blinded it, and there were people who got treatment and people who didn't, and others that got CBT. Have a guess what the increase in trauma recovery was from telling yourself a different story, reframing. 1%? Placebo effect is 30%, okay? So just pretending is 30%.
50?
Yeah, 50%. That to me, I nearly died when I read that. I thought, are you kidding me? Telling myself I'm the ambulance driver increases my recovery by 50%. Get off. That's incredible. So how did you do it? You didn't have a car accident. You just got rejected at an audit report thing. Question?
Is it fair to say that resilience is built over time?
Yes.
So therefore, you shouldn't morally cuddle. You should protect. You should not expose yourself to the situation, but develop your resilience.
Resilience is developed by living through stressful circumstances. Yes, absolutely. The deal is, can you get out? Because if you can't, if you feel trapped, if you feel locked in, hopeless, if there's no way out, you will not recover. That will not create resilience. It will create hopelessness and depression. So as long as we go through tough experiences and we know there's a way out, fine. But that's half the trouble of being in Afghanistan for 2 years. There is no way out, right? What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? What ship are you going to jump? How are you You can't. You are in the box, right? And you are in danger every day. So that's a bit hard. I mean, you could say to your commander's commander, could I get out of here? But you know what happens to your career if you do that, right? So, all right, let me power through this. Education and training workshops on work-life balance. You could go and do some training on that. Stress management techniques. I love people who've got these stress balls on their thing. You could go do a mindfulness course. Skills training, time management, assertiveness courses, time off to deal with issues. So you read that 18%, a month. Give yourself a month. Take a month off. Take a month off. You'll get better. Nearly everybody does. Take a month off. People don't think, oh, I lost a loved one. I'll be back to work next Monday. Like, take a month off. You'll get better. And working on communication skills. So here is the pièce de résistance. I spent 3 hours on this topic. I kid you not. I need a round of applause after this. No, after. This is the reveal. This is a big reveal at the end, and then we go have food and stuff. Okay, enough about you. What about where you work? What about everybody that's helping you, right? So if you're in a professional services firm or a small company or a family company, what about everybody else? Well, the first thing that helps people build resilience is knowing who you are. Having personal, strong identity and goals. That is really helpful in building resilience. Meaningful and flexible job with role clarity. You know what you're there for, and if you have to, you can take the day off. Supportive and respectful team that communicates well when trouble comes up and you talk to each other about what's going on. Clear, strong direction from your leaders that say this way, not that way. Handle it this way, don't handle it that way. And an organisation that has clearly defined objectives, so you know you're serving something that's got purpose to it, that helps you define your job. And lastly, that the environment is supportive. And by this, I just mean, what is the culture of your organisation? Is it one that catches people doing things wrong, or is it one that celebrates things that people do right? That's a really simple little distinction I love making. Do we catch people doing things wrong, or celebrate what we do right? That's the peacock diagram, which you're welcome to have. We haven't yet figured out how to share this PowerPoint with you, but I'm sure email via the IIA is going to be one of those things that we can do. There is a lot of research behind tonight's presentation. So before we go to questions, I just want to say, write to me for starters, and I'm sure, again, we can promulgate my email via you guys. Go to academia.edu and look for me. Go to LinkedIn and look for me. Go to neurocoachinginstitute.com and look for me, and I will send you the research. Okay, I've written white papers on this subject. That diagram's not in it. I only just built that for you, so thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
Yes, Rob, thank you for a great talk. I just wanted to ask you, specifically, you talked about the military and the challenges they're having in terms of that. In the world of work, what are the trends that we're seeing there? And are we more stressed? Are we more susceptible or not? And what are those stressors?
Great question.
How they change?
Great question. The two largest insurers in Australia are Comcare and GIO. About 4 years ago, the largest payout or the largest cost to those two insurers was back injuries. Today are stress. And those stress claims, each stress claim costs 4 times what each back claim cost. So stress in the workplace is the number one issue, number one, in terms of insurance claims and people going off on compo and workers' compensation and claims and so forth and so forth. Things that are going behind that. Well, people get stressed out by all sorts of things, but the increased pace of change, the increased change of technology, the increased stress that we have on balancing work and family, the declining existence of full-time secure jobs. So part-time and contracted jobs are in vogue, and full-time jobs are not in vogue. So if you've got one, hold on to it if you can. And commute, oddly enough. So the environment that we live in is incredibly stressful to us, even if we don't notice it. So that 2-hour commute or the 1-hour commute or the whatever it is, Canberra, little country town, 6,000 people, had my own publishing company, no commute, to Canberra, and on a good morning, I can get to work in 30 minutes, and on a bad morning, it takes me 60. Turn around and drive home. If I leave at 5, I can get home in 17 minutes. If I leave at 5:05 or after, it takes me an hour. Canberra, that's pathetic compared to your commute, right? Pathetic. But you think about how stressful that is when you move suburbs and your commute times change. Day after day after day after day after day. So what we're seeing is this increase, which is why the IFMH exists. The government departments are alarmed and want to do something to help. They want to say, how do we help companies change how they do business? How do we help change Australian society? How do we change our insurance industry? How do we help the Australian workforce become less stressed? And the answer is resilience. But how do you build resilience? Well, nobody knows. It's a brand new research field. And Petra, poor girl, failed her PhD. So, you know, this is the frontier. And that's a warning to anybody selling off the shelf resilience building packages. Okay? They don't exist. They can't exist. So don't buy the snake oil selling stuff like that. What I would invite is a journey with somebody that's willing to help us find out about building resilience in our organisation. Somebody who's willing to come do a pilot study, somebody who's willing to do some research at their own expense, even, to find out about our workforce. That's who I'd work with. Somebody maybe who can combine some of your knowledge with some of their knowledge and not just turn up with a, I know how to fix this answer. Yeah, I think that'd be the wisest course of action. Did I answer your question? Anyone else? Yep.
So, yeah, does exercise play a role in helping stress?
Exercise.
Let me quickly probably repeat the question for those who sit behind the screens.
Does exercise help in coping with stress?
Can you repeat? Will you repeat that?
I think now it was.
That was hard enough.
Clear.
Exercise is the bomb. So if you want to go and have a little laugh, look on YouTube for a video called 23.5 hours. It's by a doctor who spent time researching the benefits of exercise. And it turns out that the most powerful antidepressant on the planet, bar none, most effective, is 30 minutes of exercise a day. It is powerful. Now, I say one exception to that, the chemical cortisol only has to be removed out of your blood system, and that is through sleep. So nothing else you do or take can get rid of cortisol, which is one of those stress hormones. You have to sleep to get rid of that bad boy, right? Because the HPA, which is one of the systems in you, needs to coordinate a lot of chemistry to get rid of it once it's produced. So sleep and exercise are the two big, go do that. It's pretty free, right? So maybe you can charge for that. So that's a great question. Thank you for that. Anyone else?
Yeah, right.
Yep.
It seems to me that a lot of the techniques we've been talking about for managing stress, there's an element of sort of expectation. So, you're talking about a board meeting, that might be a stressful situation. Techniques you've got where perhaps you're not expecting it or just an on-the-spot stress attack?
Great question. Jeez, that's a killer. Yes, there are. And the problem with them is you have to learn them before the stress moment, right? If I'm an athlete and I know I get terrified when the gun goes off, I have to go practice resilience when the gun goes off again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And what peak performance athletes do is a thing called anchoring state. So they can learn a high performance state and then anchor it to somewhere on their body. Have you ever watched tennis tournament and wondered why they do such weird rituals? Bounce, 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 turn the racket twice. Bounce twice, look at the crowd. Bounce one more, then serve. Have you ever wondered what the hell that is? What's going on? What they are doing is triggering a high performance state. So they've built themselves a program and they're firing the program. And bam, 162 kilometers an hour, yeah! Right, but it only happens if they perform the ritual. So what athletes do and what people in the SAS do is they learn a peak performance state and then they learn how to trigger it. So the simplest version of that for anybody here is if you've had to speak in public, okay? So What are some of the common, oh, I'm getting nervous signs about speaking in public for you when you're about to speak?
Like quick breathing, like.
Okay, you start breathing a little bit quickly so you can control that. I've noticed my breathing's starting to get quite fast. I'll just go out into the corridor and breathe. What's another symptom?
Dry throat.
Dry throat, dry mouth. Brilliant. How can I combat that? Let me grab a glass of water. And instead of just swallowing the sucker, let me keep the water in my mouth until the dry mouth goes away. Swallow it, take some deep breaths. What else happens? Okay, so this tightening of the chest and this increased heart rate. Now, I'm sorry about panic, but as soon as that's happened, you've got 9 minutes to wait. So best thing you can do is go to the toilet. Delay. Meetings always start late, right? I'm not kidding. I once started, I speak in public 50 times a year, right? I've been doing this since I was 15. Nothing gets in my way. But one day I was at the RSM offices in Canberra and I was sitting in front of a group no bigger than this, and I had a panic attack. My hand was shaking, my leg was shaking, I couldn't hold this. I was holding the leg turn, hoping nobody would notice that I was getting nervous. And what I did was made fun of myself in front of the audience. I said, I'm here to talk about resilience and stress. And on slide 5, I'm going to walk you through the stress response, but you might as well forget that because I'm having one right now. Here's what's happening to me. And I walked through the stress response, making fun of it. And guess what? It took 9 minutes and I was perfectly normal again. But I had nothing else to do but that because I was on stage. Right? What are you going to do? Well, I chose to make fun of it, make light of it, point it out because that happened to be my topic. It's not going to be your topic. But so you can learn triggers, you can learn about state management. It's not magic. It's fully possible to learn how to do. The other thing people do is, anyone heard of the power pose or adopting the power posture? Have you seen the TED Talk? You know, you just stand here like this for 2 minutes, right? 2 minutes. It releases endorphins, it releases corticotrophin. You will be powerful, right? Warning, do not do it if you've been arrested by the police. Because you just look like an idiot. So, but power posturing is an amazing thing. Go talk to yourself in the toilet. Go stand in a cubicle and go, yes, yes, you know, like that. As long as no one else is around. And then come out, you'll feel like $1 million. Listen, thank you. How much? I've lost track of time. How are we going?
Book it.
I think we're fine.
Okay, great.
Harry.
Yeah, a lot of what you said earlier, it's great, and it's all about yourself. A lot of your problems, people's problems are created by the other people.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking particularly extreme aberrant behaviour, you know, sociopaths and that end of the spectrum, which we have the pleasure of meeting on occasion.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering.
Corporate psychopaths.
Yeah.
Some of my best friends. So what are some strategies for dealing with that kind of behaviour when you're dealing with a belligerent CEO or a sociopathic chairperson? And I'm sure we all know somebody a little bit like that on the spectrum probably. The first thing you need to recognise, and I say this from the point of view of a person who has spent not an inconsiderable time studying sociopathy and psychopathy and has made best friends with Dr. Hare, who made the psychopath checklist. And no kidding, have loved the study, and the reason is sociopaths and psychopaths have exactly the opposite damage in their brain to people with PTSD and trauma. That's wild. But the first thing you need to recognise about these people is they have no conscience. It makes them sound like they're not a human being, and they almost aren't. A different class of animal to anything you would normally deal with. A sociopath and a psychopath have damage in their brain that removes their conscience. What they do to you is amoral. They will sleep perfectly well at night. The only thing stopping them is a cost calculation. They will calculate the cost of damaging you, killing you. It's too high, you'll get out alive. I'm not kidding. They do emotions by using calculations. They cost-benefit analysis. You are really pissing me off right now, but I'm not going to kill you. That's the only reason you got out of there. was too costly to them. So if you can understand that, it will go a long way to understanding why they're treating you, because we take it personally. We think they're doing it because they're trying to hurt our feelings, or because, you know, we've done something bad, doing it for fun. Because they get an arc out of you, they get a reaction out of you, so they're going to pick on you. They want to laugh like anybody else. It's just that they do it mercilessly. They have no conscience. So you need to understand that, and these people, a recent study, who did it because it hasn't been released yet, but a recent study of Australian corporate leaders has found that the incidence of corporate sociopathy and psychopathy may be as high as 20%. So 20% of the people we deal with at the top end of Australian business are like what I'm telling you. Personally, let's start with that. Let's also realise and cut them a break and say they've got brain damage. That's funny, right? They've got brain damage. So cut them a break. It's like they've got any other kind of mental health disorder, only this one can't be cured. It's missing pieces of their amygdala, missing pieces of their empathy system, missing pieces of the structures in the midbrain that make us feel. They're missing. And the really, really good ones, the really kind ones, the best ones have shallow afferent emotion, which means they can just about think about feeling. Almost. They do. They have this shadow of an emotion. And they go, I don't know what that is, but it makes me feel weird. I don't like it. Let's have a beer. You know, and there's not an emotional system in there. And you got to sound, it sounds weird, right? Doesn't it? But that's what it says. So, so number one, they are like that. Number two, there's nothing you can do about it. Number three, run. Run. Let them hurt somebody else. I'm not kidding. Let them hurt somebody else because of somebody else's problem. Now, I know they might be your most lucrative account. So you have a cost-benefit analysis to make. Mental health, your bank account. Your mental health, your bank account. You made the calculation. I can't make it for you. 20% in the boardrooms. The run is my advice. Now, by the way, I'm not speaking from academic qualifications. 3 psychopaths. I have worked with 3 for murder, and I've helped 2 social psychopaths recognise that that's what they are in the boardroom. And boy, oh boy, were they so pleased to find out that's what they were. They were so happy. I expected them to get angry, but they were like, yes, that explains everything. Next. You know, it's just like, normal people wouldn't react like that. You know, it's just like, okay, cool. So I'm not talking academically, I'm talking practically. These people have no conscience. Factor that in somewhere. You had another question?
No, I was about to say, I dealt with one particular person, and not being knowing about this stuff, I found it very difficult. I read a book which you want to refer to, Snakes and Suits.
Yes.
Which it's mandatory reading.
Highly recommend Snakes and Suits.
It said what you said, run.
Not kidding. You can't win. You can't beat them. You can't beat them because you've got a conscience. That's your problem. They don't. So hard to think about that. It just does my head in every time I think about it. There's nothing inside them that has feeling. It does not compute. One last question, or we done?
What if you can't run?
What if you can't run? What if you're trapped in a relationship with one? I'll tell you what I told a girl who came to me, an Aboriginal girl who came to me, who was stuck in a situation of domestic violence with a psychopath. Honey, coaching has taught me that you always have a choice. You always have a choice. You either stay and die, or you run and die. Choice. I'm going to run and die. And guess what happened? She ran and lived, right? But she had to first recognise you still have a choice, right? You choose where you're going to die. If this is it for you, you choose where it's going to happen. And she said, well, boy, I'm not dying here. So she ran and got all the help she needed. Friends, family pitched in. She got, housing and all sorts of stuff that was all available to her. But she had to first make the decision. You've got to realize you always have choice, always. Advice to give a person. Maybe I'm a person, but I'm not. But I've had the brain scan. But you got to realize that even the guy in Afghanistan has a choice. He can have dishonorable discharge. He's just got to make that choice. You can have discharge. Nobody's got a gun to your head to stay in the army. Nobody. You can get out. But choice is really important in dealing with resilience and stress. I wish we could have a whole session on that. But anyway, you've been really great and kind, and thanks for your fantastic questions.
Dr. Robert Holmes, I think we've heard not only amazing stories, we've got your insights, we've got a few tools that we might take home, think about, and see how we can help where someone, maybe we ourselves, need help. But thanks very much for an inspiring talk. It was really great. Thanks very much. Now, before we networking, just a very few announcements. I've already told you about or reminded you about the international conference. So for those who still need to renew their membership, do it before the 30th of June, and you will be in the draw for prize a new iPhone 7. I think that's well, online you get there double. So go for it. Now is the time. Our graduate certification in internal audit. You will have heard about it. Now is the opportunity to enroll again. And this graduate certification program is really great, taken up by so many people already, and we've seen really many happy faces. So it's a great opportunity. Our next meetings. One member meeting we will have in Newcastle on the 12th of July for all of those who will be around in that area. You'll be welcome there. Next member meeting, which will include our AGM, will be on the 8th of August. So I hope to see you there all again. Please be prepared for a quick feedback survey, which you can respond to when you have your IIA app on your mobile. It's a quick one, will only take you seconds and will provide us with really good feedback. Charlie, is there anything else that you would like to mention?
Just a slight humorous point to apologise to Dr. Robert Holmes. I'm on about a 16 because I've had to admit now that sonography is actually the use of ultrasound by medical personnel. It's oceanography, I think I was confusing it with. So I hope that my resilience will be better in the future.
Thanks for the clarification. Jeremy, anything from your point?
No, just hope everyone can stay around. We've got some food and drinks and nibbles at the back, so feel free to take advantage of this. And yeah, thanks for coming.
Excellent.